Good morning, Metaverse. I'm Thor with the Red Hand, and this episode is going to be about the land claims and the land claim sales. I'm not going to be talking about the Central Space Station HABs very much, but that sale is also going on at the moment. But I did want to take a look at this. I don't just make videos for the sake of making videos, but things that I think would actually be helpful for other people, and tools that I create for myself to use, and trying to find the value and versus the increase in cost going from tiers, one tier to the next with these land claims has been a little bit complicated for me to try to figure out. There's a lot of unknowns that we really won't know the value of having a large tier land claim versus a small one until you're actually using it in game. There's a lot of nuance to that, whether you're able to hold it and actually use it to its optimum value. But to try to get a better idea of what value category you're going to be sitting in and which ones are a better choices to put your capital in towards. And so what I've done is actually put together, using two different documents, a little spreadsheet. So let's go right to that. And we have the Sage Game Manual, and I'm going off of the claim stakes, the 5 tiers, and showing you the different building slots, the resource emission bonus, and the storage capacity, which are the 3 items or aspects of the tiers that seem to be the most changing from one tier to the next, the most important ones that change. And then I also looked at the Path Towards Tomorrow document, and I'll leave links in the description for both of these documents in regards to the pricing, their supply, and another idea of how much resources emitted through the tiers in terms of what ships consume of the R4s. And so what I did is I put together a simple spreadsheet just to give myself something else to look at and to visualize the differences. And this is really rough, and it may end up not really making a whole lot of sense, but to some people. But for me, this is kind of how my brain works. And so my tier 1 is the base tier. Okay, it's the starting point, and the reason I use that, and it's the smallest one, but also up here on the game manual, everybody that plays Sage will be granted 1 free untradeable tier 1 claim. And so that really makes a base of a market. Everybody's able to at least get 1. Do you want to have multiple tier 1s versus a tier 2? That's where the dollar cost and the value of the increased items or aspects of those tiers come into play. And so that's what I'm really looking at here. So tier 1 is my base. And I come through the buildings, the emission bonus, the storage capacity, and then I look at it as percent increases from one tier to the next, totaled up, and then breaking that over the total price. And so the percent increase per value or dollar value, to give me myself an idea of what that looks like, and then the multiplier from one tier to the next, and then my choices of which ones I would go to first, given I have the budget to do each one of those. And so here, the buildings, I noticed it increases in a decreasing multiplier. And so from tier 1 to tier 2, you're literally getting 100% increase in the amount of building slots where you can put the mining buildings, the power plants to power the mining buildings, the food production buildings, gas mining facilities. All those require a building slot, and so you get twice as much space going from tier 1 to tier 2. From tier 2 to 3, it's a 75% increase. From tier 3 to tier 4, it's a 52.38% increase, and from tier 4 to tier 5, it's a 56.25% increase. And so those percent increases don't exactly line up perfectly. And so that's one of the first things that I saw. All right, well, going from one to the next, as far as what you get, some of these tiers, like tier 5, might seem a little bit better than if you're going to go up to the next tier to tier 4 or to tier 3, etc. So then we have the emission bonus, which is straightforward, 100% increase for 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 2 to 4, and then from 4 to 5 is only a 75% increase. Okay, so you have a less increase from that tier. Storage capacity is a 400% increase from tier 1 to tier 2, a 300% from tier 4 to tier 2 to tier 3, a 250 and then 220 up to tier 5. And so those are the increases from one tier to the next, not compared to all of them back to that base one level 2 or 1. Man, this is getting a little bit complicated. Hope you're following along, not getting confused by my tongue tiedness. But so breaking it down percent to dollar value, the biggest, or I should say the closest to dollar value for percent increase in items that you get with that tier is with your tier 2. And so its price increase for its value, I put it at, we'll call it a Thor score of a 1.3x. Your tier 3 seems to be the lowest value for increased price. And that is at a 5.3x compared to its increased in space and emissions, etc. Then the tier 4 is a 3.6x, and then a tier 5 is a 2.9x. So tier 5s are a lot more expensive, but they are essentially the second most effective scaling up from a tier 1 to another tier. And so if you have the money to put it in, if money is not really the main focus, if you're looking on increased productivity or increased resource space or production ability, then tier 2 is my number 1 pick. Tier 5 would then be my next number 2 pick. Then I would look at tier 4s and tier 3s at the end of it, the least or the highest cost for the increase of what we get. Now, I don't know how weighted each one of these aspects are. That's sort of where the unknowns come to. And so when you take a look at the way that the game manual talks about claim stakes, these aren't just passive plug it and forget it. You set up the land claims and you walk away, you come back a year later and it's been doing its thing for the whole time. That's not how this is going to work. It's still a very active game loop. And you're going to need the resources to be able to put those claim stakes down. And that talks about it here. In order to place the building on a land claim, players will need to provide construction resource requirements. So those minimum requirements that need to be built up to put it down. So the question is, how quickly can you put together enough resources for a tier 5? If the ability for you to gather those resources, if you don't have a lot of resource resource collecting sources, if you don't have the ship fleet size, or you're not in with a guild that is a large enough group to be able to pull those resources together quickly, then a tier 5 might actually not be your number 1 pick because it's going to take so long to get there. Maybe the tier 2 is right in your wheelhouse. You'll be able to get those resources quickly and get it producing. So that is sort of one of those weighted aspects to the active play that's required for claim stakes that will also need to come into this decision-making process. If I was in a small guild, or if I have a small fleet, I'm not going to be focusing on the higher tiers. I would be looking at a tier 1 or tier 2 claim stake as the predominant claim stakes that I look for. If I'm in a large guild, or I have a large fleet and the ability to manage a lot of in-game activity of resource collection, then your tier 3, tier 4s might make a lot more sense in order to get the increased scale. And if I do have a larger group of resource collection capability, looking back at my graph, then I would try to push up to a tier 4 instead of a tier 3 if the dollar amount is accessible. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about this from a land sale point of view. Now, buildings is a thing where we're looking at the max minning, the actual spaces that you have. I don't know exactly what the optimum arrangement is going to be. That's part of the game. That's the max minning part of the game. That's going to be a lot of fun to figure out. But our claims have different building footprints. We have 12, 24, 42, 64, and 100. Now, which one of these is going to be able to get the optimum building combination together? Because I don't think it's going to fit perfectly. You have the hub, which is the base center that you start out with. Everybody has that. Then you have mining drills and power plants to power those mining drills and some of the other buildings. You have refineries. So you're going to have so many refineries per mining drill. And then you have the Atmo reclaiming facilities, the ARFs, in gas planets and that type of thing. And then you also have the farms for growing biomass. And so, and then repair maintenance facilities to actually self-maintain these, because each of the buildings are going to degrade over time from weather conditions on a planet, from attacks, etc. So how many of these repair maintenance facilities do you have in your plot to make it more self-sustaining, to reduce the amount of touches that you need to have on that claim? And then you have defenses, shield generators, space stations. And so all of these different building types really are going to fill up those 12, 24, 42, 60, 64, and 100 building slots. You can imagine how the tier 1 is going to get super crowded real fast, and you're going to be limited on your possibilities from all these buildings that you want to put in there, and that's a big consideration. That's going to weight the importance of these numbers. So the increase from 64 to 100 might be a massive productivity increase if you're able to max min those buildings and the resource output that they can do. So again, there's a lot of unknowns that are, even with the Sage game manual and how extensive it has been, there's still a lot of questions surrounding that. So when you're taking a look at the land claims on the market, first off, do not FOMO into this. This is not something that you want to get super excited about and just grab something that you're not sure about. Really think about what you're planning on doing with your gameplay. How active are you going to be versus how much capital do you have to put into this? Now, claim stakes are going to be V1, and there are things that I want to talk about on this first section in the game manual is actually V1 planets in the safe or the security zone. They'll have unlimited slots. So in the security zone, you can put as many tier 1 claim stakes as you want. In the MRZ, you have a limited slots for tier 2 through 5. So say security zone, all claims have unlimited slots that you can put on the different planets, and that is just going to reduce the percent of total yield coming out of that planet by how many claim stakes are on it. So if there is 1 million people on the same planet, the amount that you're getting out is going to be chopped up into 1 million different portions to the claim stake size that you have. So that's something to consider once the security zone is saturated and it becomes sort of not worth putting a claim stake on one of those closed planets. That will encourage the expansion to the MRZ, which would be much more profitable. And the MRZ claim stakes tier 2 through tier 5 are limited. Tier 1s are unlimited, but tier 2 through 5 are limited. So that brings a lot of value up to the tier 2 through 5 claim stakes. And that's another reason why I have my tier 2s on my as number 1. Tier 1 I'm really not considering as something I want to buy a lot of, and because I want to spend most of my time in the MRZ and the HRZ, high risk zone, with where my ships are going to be, I want those land claims to be in that same area. And so the value, the limited spots is going to bring more value to the tier 2 through 5. Now it's the Sage version 1 where players will no longer be able to extract resources from the faction-owned planetary facilities. So until V1, we'll be extracting our resources from faction-owned planetary facilities. And then V1 really kicks off the player-driven economy, and that is sort of I guess where the value of claim stakeholders as part of the society in Star Atlas really starts taking off. The prestige that a land claim holder or a claim stakeholder will have in the Star Atlas community is really going to become evident at that point, because the claim stakes are the source from where you pull resources and bring them into the economy. And that would be purely player driven at that point. The faction facilities will shut down and player owned facilities will start up. And so in all societies, that source point where the resources are extracted from the environment and brought into the economy for everybody to use, that prestige always comes along in that position in society. So I actually look forward to that being sort of a bit of a flex, but also just a cultural thing. You're a land claim. Your claim stakeholder, that has something that comes along with it. Just like, you own land. That brings prestige to everybody in society as it is. And so the main drivers, that's a big part. So every group should have a healthy subgroup of people that have land claims and can generate those resources in the SRZ, MRZ, and the HRZ. The ability to get started with a larger claim stake that I had mentioned before, this is where it actually talks about the expanding your footprint. In order to get a claim, tier 1, you have to have one council or privilege point. For a tier 5, it will cost you 16 privilege points. And so there are a limited number of privilege points that you have, and you can rearrange them as you choose, but land claims can take up a very large amount. That's something I did not add into my table that might be important. It doubles from each tier, and so it actually scales up in a much more linear fashion. So I don't think that really changes the way that this graph or this table works, but that is something to consider as far as your ability to get started right away. And so this tier 5 is going to take a little bit of time to build up your council rank before you can actually activate it and start utilizing it. But if you can think through it like that, then you can make an informed decision and get a tier that's going to be close to the type of scale of gameplay, I guess is the best way to think about it. The scale of gameplay that you plan to have as a single location. because you have to protect that land claim. There's defenses, but when an entire fleet of enemy fleet comes in and tries to take over a planet or a space station, that's going to affect you directly, and so you're going to want to do those land claims in that area that you are predominantly around or your group is predominantly around. Now, a couple notes that were at the bottom of the game manual for the claim state section was depositing your claims on faction fleet, so score, will give you rewards in the form of R4. So the claim stakes won't be coming actively used on Sage until V1, which may be 1 to 2 years out, going from testnet to pre-alpha, and then pre-alpha to V0, V0 to V1, as Chypto had explained in the Metaverse Nomads discussion, which I will link in the description below. If you have any questions, that is a great one to watch. But each version is generally or roughly about 1 year of development in time. And so they're going to be releasing the test net, the a testnet version of it in the beginning of the new year, and so from that point going through the different stages, it could be 2 years before version V1 is active and we're playing, but that whole time score you'll be able to get the R4 resources as rewards. Players will start with one untradeable T1, so everybody starts with a T1. Players are able to craft and upgrade claim stakes. So if you have T1 and you want to craft and build it to a Tier 2, you can do it that way, which will be scaled in difficulty with their value. It's not going to be an easy process to upgrade land claims. We don't know exactly how much, so that's sort of an unknown with getting one tier versus the other. Asteroid belts are not available for claim staking. Everybody can mine them. You won't be able to isolate them. So that's really, asteroids are sort of outside of that land claim part of the game. And then the gas giants do not require claim stakes due to they don't have physical surface, but you can harvest them with space stations. So how space stations work with that actually is a question I'd like to dwell more on, but for our purposes, the claim stakes aren't used for the gas giants. So those are just a couple things I wanted to run over.